Perfect. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Pineapple's webinar series. Once a month here at Pineapple, we love to bring in special guest speakers that are valuable to the real estate community and the real estate industry to share their insights of what's going on in the market. This really started as a way for Pineapple to ensure that we were bridging an engagement between the mortgage community and the real estate community, making sure that we were helping arm our real estate partners and agents with valuable information that they could then share with their clients, with their partners, with their referral sources. We wanted to ensure that we as an organization were doing everything that we could to empower our real estate partners because we value them and appreciate your support and your business so much. Today, we have an exceptional guest speaker, Scott Larter, who's the Vice President of Data Solutions and Sales for FCT, First Canadian Title. And Scott's going to be taking us through a lot of in-depth data and details that they have regarding property values, but more specifically, what is going on in the property market as it relates to renovations and improvements and things of that nature. So what types of improvements are going to increase property value? What type of permits are we currently seeing opened right now across the province that Canadians are doing or Canadians are working on when it comes to renovating their properties? And he's going to talk about how that's going to translate to your business as real estate agents and how it can help you support your customers' growth and success. Scott is actually caught in traffic and is going to be joining us in a few minutes, but I thought I was going to get started and cover a couple housekeeping items so we can jump right into it when he gets here. So the first thing that I want to cover from a housekeeping perspective is that this is an engagement opportunity for everybody on the call. So if you have any questions, if you have any information that you want to share with Scott or ask him anything, please feel free to do so using the chat Q&A on the Zoom call, okay? And we'll make sure that that call or that question is being answered. Now, the next thing I want to mention is that we have an incredible event coming up, actually this Thursday. That's the Pineapple Indochino event. Indochino, for those of you who don't know, is actually the largest made-to-measure clothing company in North America right now. And they make men's and women's suits and business attire like dress shirts. This is actually an Indochino suit that I'm wearing right now. And on Thursday, we have the Yorkdale Mall location of Indochino closing down and offering Pineapple a private fitting for us and our valued guests. So if you'd love to come and get fitted for a made-to-measure suit, whether male or female, please join us this Thursday at Yorkdale Mall, and you'll get a private fitting at a great event. Go ahead and scan that QR code to get registered. And finally, don't forget to follow us on social, okay? We share a lot of valuable content and information. We appreciate your support very much. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Please go ahead and follow us at those handles. And if you love the things that we and your agents do here at Pineapple to support you and your business, go ahead and scan that QR code to leave us a Google review. With all of that being said, I'm going to take this moment to welcome our incredible guest, Scott, and let him jump in and share all kinds of valuable information that's going to be insightful for you and your business. Scott, welcome.
Thanks.
It's all yours, and you got your presentation all queued up. You can just tap on it to move through the deck.
Hi, everybody. I'm Scott Larter from First Canadian Title. I also work with an organization called Opta Information Intelligence, and my job primarily is to focus on property data, valuations, construction costs, renovations, really what's going on across the country when it comes to buildings, permits, everything that's going on for various industries. I'll talk a little bit more about that now. So for those of you that haven't heard of, I think probably from a real estate perspective, people have heard more about First Canadian Title. During the real estate process, the lawyers often check to see who's on title to make sure the person that's selling the house is in fact the one that owns it. So a lot more in the industry know about First Canadian Title. Not as many know about Opta Information Intelligence. I work for both organizations. So a few years ago, FCT and Opta combine data sets in order to build products for the insurance, real estate, appraisal, fintech, insurtech world. So with that combined data set, I now represent both organizations from a property data perspective. But when you look at some of the data assets that we have access to, you'll see a number of things. I mean, the big one here is we're the only national provider of this sort of information. So we have data on over 18 million locations across the country, as well as 6 million commercial properties across the country. We provide an AVM, which is a data model that provides the current market value of a home. For those of you that are more familiar with things like House Sigma or Zillow, there's the Zestimate, or if you go on House Sigma, you see the value that they put on a property. That's an AVM. It's just it's another way. It's an alternative to an appraisal or an alternative to a evaluation done by a real estate agent in real time. We do a lot of risk analytics, so how likely the house would have a claim, like a sewer backup or water or fire. We look at crime, we look at wind and hail. We do construction costs. This is a big part of our business. So when you do an insurance quote, so anyone that has had an insurance policy on their home, and hopefully everybody in this room and on the call has an insurance policy on their home. When you quote for an insurance policy, one of the big things the insurance companies are trying to figure out is, if this house were to burn to the ground, what would it cost to in fact rebuild it? And we have to be able to do that in real time. So we'll talk a lot about that today, but we do that from coast to coast. We have Canada's largest permit database. So we use permits for a number of different reasons, but one is for change detection. We like to understand how this house has changed. Have they added a pool? Have they finished the basement? Have they added a detached building? It's a way for us to keep update and accurate on our data. But there's a lot of lenders and there's a lot of insurance companies that use permit data to understand their books of business and maybe any changes that have occurred in that book of business. Neighborhood analytics, comparables, inspections. I mean, these are all things that are quite familiar with the the real estate world, just being able to provide more insights on the house that you're selling, evaluating. We provide a lot of that data as well. So who uses us? We have insurance brokers, we have mortgage brokers, we have insurance companies. And when I say insurance companies, that could be the actuarial teams, the data science teams, the underwriters, really anybody that evaluates the home. When I talk about lenders, that could be mobile mortgage advisors, that could be underwriters, that could be marketing, that could be the data science team. I mean, there's a number of different things that are used. Aggregator sites, so you look at things like rate.com, formerly Kinetics. They all use our data to be able to provide quotes in real time, both from a mortgage and insurance policy perspective. We're used by digital real estate organizations. So if you look at some of these platforms that are online, how they make money is they sell real estate leads. And what they tend to do is use real estate values as a way to generate those leads. So our data is used in that regard as well. We pre-fill appraisal reports. So when appraisers are out in the market and they're trying to do their due diligence on a home and figure out what the market value is, we help them save time by, when they put in the address, we pre-fill the entire appraisal document on their behalf, saving them hours and hours of work. We have real estate agents that use our data. We have marketing agencies that use our data. I'll give you an example. Wouldn't Home Depot love to know every house within a 5-kilometer radius of a retail store that didn't have a finished basement? That allows them to be very surgical in their target marketing campaigns, and they leverage data like ours to be able to understand the market. And we're used in the retail world, just again, using property data, real estate listings, real estate values across the country to really target market and appeal to the best customer possible.
Scott, just one question before you dive in deep and get into the nitty gritty here. So you mentioned that you're the largest database of permits in the nation right now. So does that help influence your AVM valuations because you know the improvements in real time that are being made to certain properties?
100%. So great question. We go to the local municipalities across the country, and some are really organized with their permits, others are not as organized by their permits. But when you think about market value of a home, obviously one that's updated something or added square footage to their home or added a detached garage, in most cases, the value is going to increase on the property. So in an effort to, not send an inspector to every home in Canada, we that would be great. We'd learn a tremendous amount of information. We leverage those permits because as part of that permit process, we get the issue date. So we know when the permit's been issued by the municipality. We get the permit type. So could that be a finished basement, a detached garage, a renovation, a demolition? I mean, if they demoed an entire home and put up something new, that tells us a lot as well. So we also know the estimated reno cost. So when a builder will apply for permits, their job is to also provide an estimated reno cost. So we're going to demo this house and we're going to put up something new, and the estimated value of that is $750,000. We find that is often a little bit low on what the actual cost is. Maybe there's some tax assessment implications in there where they're not trying to shoot for the moon and increase taxes. I think and oftentimes they'll put in a number that's acceptable. And we also get the permit close date, which is a very important one as well, because if a permit isn't closed, is it actually done? Is it safe? Has the city come by to say, yeah, this is, this basement renovation, this basement apartment that we put in, we converted this to a triplex. If they don't close on the permit, it's not done yet. So that tells you a lot as well. But going back to your original question, that's how we update our data, is we capture it from a number of different areas across the country, and permits is a great one that we get about 30,000 permits a month right now across the country. So it's a big one. But when you think about banks and how they would use permits, if I have a mortgage customer and I find that there's a number of houses that just completed a permit, again, I'll use finished basement as an example. Isn't that a great time to reach out to them for a HELOC? Like there's great ways to cross-sell, upsell, and just understand your book and opportunity that much more, leverage your data.
Yeah, and I mean, our audience here, mixed between mortgage agents and real estate agents. I see a couple opportunities that exist from that. One, as you mentioned, from a mortgage standpoint, obviously aiding in the financing, but from a real estate standpoint, somebody who's finishing a basement apartment, would obviously need a tenant in there.
Yep.
So being able to support on that side of finding a tenant and supporting a client or a potential client in that fashion could be great. I think a lot of times permits probably lead towards sales, right? People are often doing renovations to homes in preparation of something, a moment that's happening. So understanding what type of activities going on in the communities that real estate agents are working in might help them identify some really good client opportunities there.
I think the pandemic told us a lot as well. I think when we were all horrible time, we were all locked up in our houses. As an extreme extrovert, that was a very difficult time for me, but permits were pulled, and while we were watching them, it was much more about enjoying your home that much more. So creating as much space as possible, converting that garage into a man cave, or adding a pool, or putting in a new detached building. A lot of it was more about, for those that didn't leave the downtown core and move into more rural areas, a lot of people were using construction and the ability to really maximize the benefit and value of their home. So
amazing,
for sure.
Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing some of the numbers here.
When I think back 10 years ago to when I started working for Opta, when you think about getting an insurance policy, it would be an hour and a half on the phone with an insurance agent, an insurance broker, and they would ask you all sorts of questions about your house, year built, square footage, percentage of carpet versus tile versus hardwood. I mean, it was the worst hour and a half you could possibly spend just trying, and really, who knows what the year built of their home is? Who knows what the square footage of their home is? A lot of time you're just guessing. We know that stuff. So that was just with one company. I mean, you'd call an insurance company, that would be one quote. You'd have to do it again if you wanted to get more. I think what data has enabled everybody to do is today, there's a couple of insurance offerings where you can go and answer 3 questions and have a fully bound policy in 3 minutes. Like, that's how far we've come. And I like to think that data has helped us get there. Today, Opta / FCT does roughly 60 to 70,000 unique transactions per day. So what does that mean? That means an insurance broker, a mortgage broker, an appraiser, a real estate agent, a fintech, whatever. Somebody is pulling information to learn about a specific location. And that to me is not impressive in the fact that that's a big number. But if there's ever any edits made to the data, let's say, your house, we think that you don't have a finished basement, but like many in the pandemic, you finished your basement. You want to make sure you're properly covered with your insurance policy. You're going to tell your insurance company that your basement is now finished. We capture that data. So we are actually improving the accuracy of our data set by 60 to 70,000 times a day, which is amazing, which is pretty cool. Moving on. So I've come today to talk about a few things. Number one, we're going to talk about building costs. So I think during the pandemic, we saw building costs, especially lumber, go through the roof. We saw renovations and ROI that we want to look at, the ones that provide more return on investment, and some of those that really you're not going to get the return you're hoping for. And then as Opta does all the building costs for all the insurance companies across the country, I put together a few slides of example properties. Everybody's going to put their construction demo, developer hat on, and you're going to guess how much you think that house is actually would cost to build. We'll see how accurate you are. So when we look at during the pandemic, this slide really talks to the different provinces and the different components to build a house. So you've got your basement, your kitchen, your bathroom, your roofing, and your aluminum siding. So these are the ones that we saw the biggest increase in cost when it came to doing construction. I mean, I think are we national in the audience here? Is it mostly Ontario?
Absolutely.
So, and the people in this room, obviously being more from Ontario, you saw a 5.9% increase in finishing your basement. So that could be anything from subfloor to the drywall, to the lumber, to the electrical. I mean, overall, as to finish a basement was roughly an increase of almost 6%. Kitchens, bathrooms, roofing. And then when you look across the country, there were specific areas that were of higher. So when you look out east in Nova Scotia, we saw, a higher, Northwest was a lot more expensive, 7 to 9% increase year over year versus the gray areas, which was closer to 4. So this is something that we monitor on, I want to say daily basis, but at least a monthly basis, because we have to be able to provide this in real time to insurance companies when you are quoting on your home. Any questions on this slide here? I don't know if everybody can see it, but because of the window there. What was one of the big ones? Lumber. So lumber, if you think back to anyone who tried to build a deck during the pandemic, I mean, lumber costs increased 400%. So what actually happened is lumber became more expensive than the composite. So when you talk to anyone who buys composite decking to build a deck, that's supposed to be the premium product. But lumber was actually more expensive than the composite. So what do you think the composite companies did?
Raise their price.
They raise their price because they look at themselves as a premium product. So little things like that where things that were considered lower grade increased their prices. Everything kind of increased because of where they position themselves in the market. Obviously, areas of the country was going to be a lot easier to get lumber than others. This is more of an average, but those more remote areas where not as much population, a lot of the lumber from the north came south, actually went down to the US quite a bit of it. So we were kind of stuck a little bit, but did anybody try and build a deck during that time? No, just hung out in your houses and played PlayStation like me. Yeah,
I got a question for you
Sure.
on this one, Scott. And I don't know if you know the answer to this one,
Sure.
but obviously, as you mentioned, improvements to the property, most of the time people do it with an expectation that it'll also improve the value of their property, right? Lift the value of their property. Obviously, during the pandemic, we saw significant increases in property values. With this increase in price, increased percentage increase in cost associated to do certain renovations, certain improvements, did you see that offset on the price increase as well?
The pandemic, when you think back to real estate prices as well as construction prices, I think at the beginning of the pandemic, nobody wanted anybody else inside their house. So I think if I remember correctly, the real estate listings were quite low because or they were doing it only virtually. And how well are you going to really do when it's only virtual? People want to go inside and see the house, feel the house. Where construction costs were going up. So now you've got people that want to do construction, they build out their basement, but values are sort of flat. So because construction costs were more expensive, maybe a $30,000 basement is now a $60,000 basement. Do you expect to make that $60,000 back? In early pandemic, no, because there just wasn't the audience. Similar to what we saw earlier this year, there just wasn't the real estate activity in the market to have people coming and bidding on your home. And in a lot of markets in the country, you've got bidding wars and things like that. Then you went into a place where real estate prices went, because money was still quite cheap back then. I think I was paying 1.85%, which, gosh, I wish I had that back. But because money was cheap, costs for doing renos were still relatively expensive, but the market took off. I mean, you would put your house on the market and it'd be sold in hours, not days, not months, but hours. So it really felt like anything you did to the house would, nothing crazy, but anything you did to the house, you get your return because 40 people would be bidding on it. And, whether there was a finished basement or not, I don't think it really played as much into it. It was just the excitement that, hey, this is a house that I might be able to buy. Yeah, you've got 30 other people that feel the same way. So it was great for sellers, not so great for buyers. Now you've got a place where construction's come down a little bit, but it's still more expensive than it was before the pandemic. Money is more expensive because interest rates have gone up. Earlier this year, again, you were in a situation where really the people that were putting their houses on the market had to, whether they couldn't afford their mortgage, God forbid, divorces and things like that. But, they were really putting the house on the market because they had to. So when you're doing renovations at a high cost and there's a market that just doesn't have as much activity, again, you're going to be in a spot where you might be overspending. And depending on where you're overspending, finishing that kitchen, putting in new countertops, there may be only one bid and they've got all the power in the negotiation, as you know. So it's a funny cycle, and I will continue to monitor it. But really good question. Appreciate it.
Cool.
Permits. What did we see in permits? So can everybody see that? Oh, it's kind of faded. Apologize. So overall, I mean, the big number in 2021 is we saw a 5.7% increase in permits from the year before, from 2020. So that's when you started to see a little bit more construction. But look what happened in 2022. As I mentioned, money was still a little bit cheaper and the market was going crazy. That's almost a 12% increase in permits. So if we were getting 30,000 permits per month and we saw a 12% increase, that's a lot of new permits. And that's individual permits. So, we're looking at things like if you finish a basement, you're going to need structural, you're going to need plumbing, you're going to, there's a number of permits that go into it. But what we also saw, especially during the pandemic, when everybody was at home, commercial permits way down. So nobody was coming into the offices. Actually, companies were downsizing on this office space. There wasn't build outs for office space. So you saw less commercial permits, less institutional permits. Today, that's starting to come back where, a lot of the banks have mandated almost to bring people back to the office. Every company seems to have a different hybrid model or try and come in once a week or whatever it might be. So you're starting to see commercial permits increase. But I don't know if we'll ever see commercial get back to where it was pre-pandemic, which is kind of sad. But,
yeah.
Fingers crossed. I'm an office guy. I like going to the office.
I mean, commercial real estate is interesting because it's one that doesn't just impact commercial real estate.
Yeah.
There's restaurants, there's services, there's stores, there's transit, there's gas, there's all of these things that get supplemented through, commuting into work, right?
Yeah. During the pandemic, I had to go downtown a few times and think about the path.
Yeah.
You know, the stores and the dry cleaners, retail, all the things that you saw down in the path. It was glad they survived. I mean, most of them anyway. So we'll see what happens. Any questions on permits?
So how could real estate agents and, you know, other members of our audience here today would they be able to access that information anywhere? Or is that something that they would have to work in a collaboration with a partner that does have access to that info?
Permit data, construction data, you know, a lot of this stuff is not easily found publicly. There are companies like ours that will get the data, they'll organize it and make it available at the address level so that's easily used. But, you know, when I think about mortgage brokers, real estate agents that leverage our data today, you know, we'll monitor their portfolios for them. So if a brokerage has 20,000 leads or customers that they have in their book, and they want to make sure that they understand what's going on in their, you know, in that book of business, we can monitor those things for you. So things like, you know, things like permits. So if somebody in that book at the address level, 123 Main Street in Markham, Ontario, has pulled a permit to do a renovation, maybe that's a really good time for a real estate agent to reach out to their customer or a broker, because they may need money from a home equity line of credit perspective. But to me, being a trusted advisor in this industry is knowing when to reach out and help. And something's going on, if they're finishing their basement or they're putting in a pool, maybe that's an opportunity to reach out. And I don't know if I would say, hey, we know you pulled a permit on your house, love to talk to you about it, but use it as a trigger to have that conversation. Hey, was, you know, in your neighborhood, drove by your house and was thinking about you. How are things going? Just an opportunity to pick up the phone and call them at the right time. Always. Yeah. What I'm seeing here is different than what I'm seeing here. So I don't know. Yeah, so the next one. Yeah, which renovations have needs that? Perfect. So when I look at,
Oh, yeah, question, Scott?
yeah, sorry.
Permit question,
Yes,
on the commercial side.
Yep.
Are you seeing a lot of alternative commercial such as working house, incubation spaces, laneway, known by all kinds of
yeah,
definitions and all kinds of names, so in-law suites, granny suites, you know, get away from your kid house.
definitely seeing those. Yeah, we're, you know, the few that you mentioned at the end, creating more space,
Yeah.
creating income properties, you know, converting to duplexes, triplexes. Yes, definitely seeing that.
And
I haven't dug into the data
I was
on,
gonna say, is
yeah.
it differentiated between the other permits, and have we seen a change as soon as government has made that change in
Yeah.
the Building Act?
Optic comes out with
Or whatever.
yeah, Optic comes out with a quarterly construction guide, which does talk to what permits, what themes that we're seeing in the market. So I often share it on LinkedIn and to our customers. If you want to find me on LinkedIn, I always put it out on the quarterly basis. Our Q1 report came out in April. Our Q2 report will likely come out in July, but I'll make sure that you have a copy if you want to distribute to everybody. And you know, please follow me on LinkedIn for any updates when it comes to that. But I'll try and get more information on that if I can grab your card after and answer that question, if that's okay. No problem. But what, you know, when we look at the permits, what renovations have Canadians done? I mean, a lot of these aren't, you know, there's not a big surprise. You've got bedrooms, washrooms, kitchens. Those are three that are of the higher return on investment when it comes to doing renovations. Living spaces, office spaces, indoor gyms. I think those are more about spending more time at home and being able to have an efficient day. Then we're seeing, you know, pools, the increase in cost of getting a pool in the last 3 years. I remember when pools were $50,000-$60,000 to put in, and you know, that would include landscaping, you know, you do your tile around the outside, you put up your, you know, your safety fence. I had a friend of mine put in a pool last year, the same pool that would have cost $60,000 to $70,000 before the pandemic, cost him $225,000. Isn't that insane? So, you know, again, we go back to what renovations can you do that are going to have a positive ROI? that's a tough one. Yeah,
Curious about that,
Yeah.
that increase, is it more so material or labor? Because I'm finding the trades labor
Yeah.
piece has been. increased.
So the question in the room is that whether that increase has been caused due to materials or labor cost.
all the, and demand. I mean, again, when during the pandemic, when people were staying at home and trying to maximize the things that they could do at their house, pools took off. And there's only so many pool companies. There's only so many, when you think about vinyl pools and what goes into doing a vinyl pool, I think the popularity of fiberglass pools really took off as well. And those are pre-made molds that get brought in on a crane and they lower it in your backyard. There's only so many of those that they can make. So a neighbor of mine, he works for a pool company, and they're taking massive deposits, and we might be able to get to you next summer. So think about how, I'm excited, I'm gonna get a pool, but you can't get it till next summer. So it's a combination of a number of things, but again, I question, hey, if you put that pool in your house, is that going to give you the ROI? Because any real estate agent will tell you, you either want a pool or you don't want a pool. And if you don't want a pool, you're not going to look at houses, right? So, good question.
Cool.
So then this is what we saw year over year. I'm sorry, I don't know why it's showing up so fuzzy, but year over year increases in building costs. I mean, if you think back to what we saw in 2021, it was a lot closer to 6% increases. I'm talking about Ontario. Things are hovering a little bit more, about 5, 4.5. So prices pre-pandemic are still up, but we're starting to see them slightly hover and flatline a little bit. And inflation is still there, as we all know. The interest rates continue to be where they are, and gas prices are high. And don't just think about the materials themselves, think about everything that goes into it. Everything's more expensive. So that's what we're unfortunately continuing to see, but it'll be interesting to see what we see in the next report, which will be out in July. So questions? This is the building cost index. So this is looking at 2012 through 2022. Since 2012, things have pretty much gone up 50% than what they did. So I did a renovation myself in 2017. Thank you very much for my wife pressuring me to do that. My wife's a designer and a real estate agent herself, so I often don't get a choice in the matter, but we were able to put in our fiberglass pool and do all those things in 2017. Things have obviously gone quite up since, and real estate values have as well. So I know that before the pandemic went way up, then came back down. But if you look pre-pandemic to now, we're still quite a bit up. I mean, I've seen data around 25-30% since pre-pandemic. So we're still doing quite well. But I know a lot of people have short-term memory and think, my neighbor sold their house last January for 1.4 million. I think that's what my house is worth today. It's since gone down 20% since then. So interesting. Fuel, we talked about gas prices earlier. Putting gas in your car, expensive. Putting gas in a tanker truck that's going to carry lumber across the country, very, very expensive. So that cost gets pushed downstream. So if it costs more money for chainsaws because of the gas, then who's traveling with that material, that's going to cost more money. The retailer that's selling it, buying it for more money, and therefore has to sell it for more money. So this is just another factor that we saw as gas prices seem to skyrocket over. I was in Vancouver last week, and I'm happy what we're paying here. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
Questions? No. I think anyone here watch HGTV?
Oh,
HGTV has been a phenomenon to the building and renovation world. I mean, I think all the different shows that love it or list it, or you've got, I forget all the titles of it, but you've basically got all these shows that are building up the hype of doing renovations, or again, maximizing the space in your house. And what I always laugh at is the fact that they're doing renovations. You know, we'll rebuild this entire home for $25,000. That just, I mean, that just doesn't happen, right? And we'll do it in a week. So here's another one. You know, there's a deadline and we have to get it done. So everybody's going to work all through the night to get it done. That's, while it definitely boosted the excitement for renovations, I think it created a very unattainable expectation. And I know in talking with builders and construction, there seems to be more pressure these days to drop the number, meaning, you know, take their quote down, or do it in a faster timeline. There's a meme or a online video that I saw the other day. You can either have it quick, you can have it cheap, or you can have it, I forget the three.
Two of the three.
You can only get two of the three.
Quality or fast.
And the way that builders, you know, you look at lumber went way up. So when they quote you, they have to quote you where the lumber prices are that day. If in 6 months they start, let's say they allocate of your $100,000 budget, they allocate 30,000 towards lumber. If it goes to 15,000 costs, like you're getting that money allocated, you can move that around. It's not like you're locked in. They haven't all of a sudden made $15,000 profit. So it's a very interesting world in the fact that everybody wants to renovate their house, but what they're expecting to pay, triple it. Like, and you have to have that contingency. There's some of the older homes in the country. As soon as you start ripping out walls, you're going to find something. And remember those permits you have to close on earlier? If you find something and they won't close your permit until you fix that, you know, these are the things that, so it doesn't all go as smoothly as it does on HGTV, or there's not always a fix it that happens in 10 minutes that you see on the show. So it's definitely a phenomenon, but I think it creates, you know, those expectations are a little off. So what are some of the renovations that yield the best return on investment? I think any real estate agent will tell. I was talking to my wife about this yesterday, who's a designer and real estate agent. She said the number one, hands down, is painting. You put a fresh coat of paint on a house, you're going to get that money back plus, you know. And in this case, I put a 150 to 200%. You know, that $2 to $3 per square foot, that takes into consideration a number of things, but you know, depends on the type of paint that you use. Depends on how good the guy or girl is that's painting. So there's a number of factors that go into it, but that's one that I definitely see as one of the more positive ROI achieving renovations you can do. No matter if you're in a condo or in a home, it just makes everything fresher, newer. It hides any blemishes or anything, you know, in your walls. And I would stick to you've heard this probably on HGTV, stick to colors that are very, that everybody would like. I mean, I love the color purple or whatever peach this is. I'm not going to color mine. I'm not going to paint the walls peach. Questions on painting?
Are you sure that your bedroom is not peach?
What goes on in my bedroom? Finished basements. This is an interesting one because again, costs have changed. Do you want to add a bathroom? Do you not want to add a bathroom? I think from an overall market value of your home, it would, you know, I think you'd yield 50 to 60% of that money by finishing your basement, depending on what type of things that you do in your basement. Not everybody wants a pool table. Not everybody wants a wine cellar. Not everybody wants, you know, the big oversized bar. So keep that in mind. You may be, with the components that you put in your basement, it might fit you and your family's lifestyle. It may not fit everybody's lifestyle. But what's interesting is that when appraisers are appraising your home, they may not even look at your basement because they're looking at comparables, and it just doesn't give the value back in an appraisal that it does, that it might in market value. So keep that in mind. If an appraiser comes in and you may have a walkout basement that's 1,000 square feet, building it out at, you know, 40, 50 or more cost per square foot. If an appraiser comes to appraise it, maybe you're taking out a home equity line of credit, they may not give you the full credit for that basement, but it's a massive living space in your home. You just may not get the value you're hoping for out of that. So market value and appraised value, yes, they're one and the same, but I sometimes see them treated quite differently.
And I think one important thing for our audience to keep in mind as you're going through these various renovations and the uplift in value on them, as most realtors and mortgage brokers in the market know today, there's a distinct power struggle between buyers and sellers, right? Buyers want the highest or lowest price for the property, sellers want that highest price, or they haven't even forgot, or they haven't remembered that prices have come down even, right? So they still want the price from last year. I think as we're working with these different, types of personalities and their different wants and needs on the selling side of the business, one way we can actually support our sellers, navigate this, downturn of a market or depressed pricing that they've seen over the last few months is by helping them achieve the highest value by applying some of these renovations before selling, right? So having the conversation of, if you want to maximize your listing price, maximize that sale price, there are certain steps that we could take to ensure that we're working towards your goals or meeting your goals, right? So I think always having our sales hat on or our customer service hat on in ensuring that we're meeting the needs of our clients through some of the info that you're providing.
100%. I think that's
questions on plan. You're asking about building small units in the backyard. So, we talked about the laneway houses, but they're asking if they can build more small units. I don't think that's
So one of the questions online is building units, like detached units in the backyard, otherwise known as laneway housing. I guess the question is like, what's the maximum number of units that would be eligible for it?
I know that's being looked at, I think, provincially as we speak.
Yeah, it's a provincial mandate.
Yeah.
Today it's one as a
Yeah.
detached. So you can get up to 4 units approved without going to committee right now in the GTA, which has already been set, and you can have 1 laneway unit detached from the property.
And then they were also asking about builders to reach out to, which I'm not sure we could recommend builders, but and then how to get funding for that construction cost.
Yeah, so the other second question on the line here was any recommended builders and how could we finance the deal? Recommended builders, I mean, there's obviously a great list of people, across various provinces that can help support depending on where your geographic location is. My strongest suggestion is talking to community-based real estate agents. They typically will know a lot of the developers and a lot of the builders in the areas that they could refer to. There's even great apps that are available today, but I'm a big supporter of supporting local businesses. And, if you're supporting a local realtor and they're supporting a local developer and contractor, is obviously good for the community. In terms of financing renovations, there's obviously quite a few ways that you can go about doing this. And, the main one is really accessing your existing equity to be able to do so, whether it comes in the form of a line of credit, whether it comes in the form of a second mortgage. There's generally a very, low cost option available for accessing equity to be able to take advantage of a home renovation, especially in a lot of the cases that Scott's talking about, where there's going to be a lift in value. So you do a renovation, you see a lift in value, you also have an option of finding alternative solutions after that increase, right? So the best suggestion that I have for that question regarding financing is speak to your Pineapple mortgage brokers, right? That's what we're here to do. That's what our agents are here to specialize in and help with. So definitely get in touch with the Pineapple agent that invited you out to this call. We have a lot of incredible ones here that can support you, and they'll be able to identify what options best suit your client's needs.
2 more questions. You want me to hold on?
What's that?
I've got 2 more questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
In a new construction condo, rather than using the builder's option to put down hardwood floors, would it be cheaper to choose the close unit, hire your own contractor to do the pouring afterwards?
So the question on the call to Scott is in a pre-construction situation, and I'm going to say, regardless of whether it's a house or a condo, often the builder will give you choices of upgrades, upgrade your flooring, upgrade your kitchens, etc. The question is it better to utilize the builder's upgrades, or would it be better for you to close on the property with standard material and then do the upgrade yourself?
My limited understanding of this is when you buy a new construction condo, they'll give you options of 4 or 5. There's probably a lower end to a higher end. The amount of volume that they're buying that lumber in they're getting at a much cheaper price point than if you walked into Home Depot or you went to your local lumber yard. Because they're buying it for 400 units. They're not buying it for one unit. If you, and they're doing the work as part of the negotiation. If you were to say, don't do that, maybe you negotiate a lower price for the unit, and you go get somebody externally, that lumber is going to be more expensive, and I guarantee you the labor is going to be more expensive. So I'd weigh out your options on that. Maybe it's not a material, maybe negotiate, hey, if I buy the material, can you install it? Like I think there's some different things that they can do. They may not stand behind it. They may not provide warranty on the material because it's not material that they bought. But I think if price is what you're looking at, you're going to get a much better deal going through the builder of the building.
The last question we have right now is, when you finish a basement, the ceiling height is not 6.5 feet, so we're doing that.
So the question is, finishing a basement, and if the ceiling height is 6.5 feet, is it still worthwhile? Do you still get that same value?
Well, you know your house better than anybody else. I mean, if you're going to do it for the sake of having more room in your house to, to play your guitar and video games, and kids can do their homework. I mean, a lot of people would hit their head on 6.5 feet, but I think, as an extension of your home, I know that underpinning and lifting a house, that can be quite expensive as well, but it is an option if you plan to stay in that home for a long period of time. Obviously, I think homes with 8 or 9, even higher 10-foot ceilings, you're going to get a better ROI. But if you're trying to finish your basement, again, what's going to appeal to the masses? Maybe it's a kid zone, and you make it and you focus more on the kids spending their time down there. But if you're trying to do a quick flip, I don't think underpinning and lifting it, you'll get that money back. But if you're spending 30 years there, you see that as your long time home. I mean, that's where you're going to put the value in that home. We lived in the beaches for a number of years, and you saw that everywhere because they knew they were going to get the value out of it because beaches real estate was going up so fast.
Yeah, and I think there's something interesting on that question that, obviously the data is not going to tell us, right, in terms of property value lift, which is also like usability, right? So renovations come in two different, sides of their question. One side is how much is it going to increase the value of my property? And two, how much is it going to increase the quality of my life?
Yeah.
Right. It's not just about one or the other. It could be a combination of both. So I think to Scott's answer there, I think it's very wise in the sense that, not only looking at renovations from a standpoint of what it's going to do to the value of my property, but what is it going to do for the value of my life and the quality of my life, right? Additional square footage is generally a good thing for properties and real estate, but maybe you don't need it.
And basements have come a long way. I mean, I was an avid watcher of that 70s show, and when you look at the basement, it was wood paneling, it was, really low grade carpet or shag carpet or even concrete. I mean, when I grew up, that's where we played hockey. We would go down in the basement, it would be concrete and not quite finished yet, mini sticks and all, you'd throw a TV in your Sega Genesis.
Yeah.
Today, the basement has become an extension of the home. So when you look at the cost per square foot, I'll use Toronto as an example, kind of a mid-range cost per square foot to build a house, you're anywhere between $300 and $400 per square foot. So, take $400 a square foot times 2,000 square feet, that's going to give you a ballpark for kind of the mid grade of building a house. We're starting to see basements now that went from $80 a square foot, $90 a square foot to marble countertops and, lifting ceilings and ceiling speakers. And I mean, you're seeing theaters, you're seeing home gyms, you're seeing office space. It's no longer the dingy basement where you send the kids. It's becoming an extension of your home, and people are as proud of their basement as they are their upstairs of their home. So, keep that in mind when you're building out. It can run away with you. It can run away on you pretty quickly if you don't pay attention. But again, I would go back to the 50 to 60% of that money you're likely going to get back. No problem. Countertops. I mean, countertops freshen up a kitchen, they freshen up a bathroom. We're starting to see the same materials being used in the kitchen as it is used in the bathroom. So, if somebody goes and buys a slab, they'll use the same slab for their kitchen counters as they will for their countertops, maybe on a cupboards in their living room as they do in their bathrooms. So the level, whether it's marble, granite, I mean, there's all sorts. You can do a kitchen from a smaller kitchen for, you know, $3,000. You can do some of the larger kitchens up to $25,000. We've seen out there. But that is one area where I feel like you're going to get your money back, if not more. You know, obviously it has to do with the type of material. It has to do with, does it go with the flow and the design of the house? I wouldn't go out and get a yellow countertop. Maybe not. Maybe that's not the one. Maybe, you know, pink for sure. But you know, it's peach. There you go. But you know, similar to what I said earlier about paint, if you're going to update your countertops with the intent of selling your house or increasing the value of your house, add countertops that most people are going to like, because that's when you're going to get the most people that are impressed with it and may pay more money for it.
Just to give you a time check, Scott.
Yep.
Probably like 2-minute warning.
Okay. Well, I'm going to flash through a few of these. Flooring's another one, very similar to countertops and paint. You know, obviously depending on what you have. Some of the renovations with negative ROI, wallpaper, which I don't know if you've ever put your wallpaper up on the wall with your spouse. Not a good idea, first of all. Pools, especially the big elaborate, you know, turn your backyard into a resort. Wine cellars, there's only so many people that they may want that real estate for other things. Overdone hardscapes or gardens. People see that and they think maintenance, so just keep that in mind. Converting your garage into something. So whether it's the, you know, the in-law suite or your man cave, some people just want a garage that they can throw their car in, or overdoing the garage. So, you know, you go out and you spend all that money on cabinets and things. You may not get that money back either.
I smile whenever I hear of somebody putting their in-laws in the garage.
That's
Love my in-laws.
That's the worst of all of the renovations I've seen. When I saw a converted garage, it's actually a negative 250%.
Wow.
So it swings your money the other way. So, I said I was going to do a quick test with everybody. I'm going to do this very quickly. Here's a house in Toronto. It's about 4,100 square feet.
Next one.
Sorry,
There you
go to the house.
There you go.
Yeah. So we've got a house here in Toronto. It's about 4,000 square feet. It was built in 1996. Any idea what this house would be to build? Total
Building cost,
building costs? 2.5.
1.8.
I would say 1.8.
Yeah.
Oh, in 1996, how much did it
Well,
cost?
today, what would it cost today to rebuild?
I'd say like between 1.6 to 1.8.
So it's $400 per square foot and about 1.7 million to build. This house is on the market currently for 3 million. Just saying. Here's one in Barrie. It's quite flat. It's about 1,400 square feet. It's a 1-story home. Nothing crazy about it. Finished basement. What do you think?
700.
Barrie. 400,000. So $322 a square foot. Sudbury. Now think about those, like, you know, transfer prices, things like that. Anyone? $279 a square foot, 530,000. This house is on the market for under 400,000. So now you've got a situation where the building cost is higher than the market.
Wow.
Here's Edmonton. Now this is a triplex, 3 kitchens. I think 4.5, 5.5 bathrooms, 4.5 bathrooms. These are 3 legal units. $530,000 to build. Oh, century home. Sorry?
It's not the market for it.
I don't recall. Sorry, the first 2 I remember looking at it. Here's a century home in Peterborough. So this is brick, like there's no brick veneer and insulation. This is a brick home. What do you think? It's quite big too. It's about 2,800 square feet. 430,000.
Wow.
West Vancouver.
Oh, Vancouver.
This is a 6,000 square foot home,
Forget about
2 stories in the front, indoor pool. 5 million.
2.2.
Can you build it for 5 million? 1,200? Get closer. $1,400 a square foot.
What's the total price? 2.
Oh, wait.
It's on the market for 14 million.
Oh.
If anyone has like spare 14 million. But that's everything that I had prepared to kind of discuss today. Happy to do this again in the future. for
Amazing.
Updates, but
I've got one more question
Yeah.
for you. So based on the outlook for the future, according to what you're looking at, in terms of property prices in the GTA, if we're looking to see them double in the next 5, 7, 10 years.
So the question for Scott is, did you bring your crystal ball?
Yeah.
And we're gonna hold you to what you estimate the real estate prices in the GTA going up in the next 5 years are. And it's recorded.
I am simply a salesperson that sells data. I think, listening to the economists out there, I think there's a lot of things that come into play here. Number one, interest rates. As long as money continues to be expensive, it's gonna be a tough for the values are starting to come up. In my neighborhood, you're starting to see bidding offers, you're starting to see sale prices higher than listing price, which is great news. I think all the economists are talking about the immigration that's coming to Canada, so I think that brings a new buyer that's going to increase the demand for those. But I think people need to be willing to sell their house in order to generate that. So people, I think, homeowners need to feel like they're going to get enough or the value that they think their house is worth before they're going to put it on the market. So I think it'll be a really interesting. It's a really long-winded way of saying I have no idea what is going to happen over the next little while, but I like to gamble, so we'll see.
Well, that's the perfect way to close things off. Scott, we really appreciate you coming in, sharing all of this insightful information. If anybody does have any follow-up questions or would like any more information about FCT, Opta, the data that they have, or any of the information Scott shared, please don't hesitate to reach out to your Pineapple agent or ourselves. We'll be happy to help get you the answers. And ladies and gentlemen, remember that all of this data, all of this information is all designed to help us deliver the best customer experience. It's all there to arm us with information that we can share with our valued clients to help them make the best decisions, help drive more business growth and opportunity for ourselves, and help ensure that the real estate market in Canada continues to be healthy, because it is a very important part of our national economic fabric. With that being said, thank you so much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. We look forward to seeing you all next month. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That was great.
That's it. I got it.
You're running already?
Oh, yeah.
Marathon.